This episode is brought to you by Indeed. Stop waiting around for the perfect candidate. Instead, use Indeed sponsored jobs to find the right people with the right skills fast. It's a simple way to make sure your listing is the first candidates see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs have 4 times more applicants than non-sponsored jobs. So go build your dream team today with Indeed. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Muchie and Deno with Robbie Dennison and Andy Much. We've had lots of nice feedback in recent weeks as we continue with these podcasts, and they're going to be on a weekly basis going forward as well. It's been a terrible time with the weather lately, so we've decided to go back into the archives and chat about some horrific conditions you fellas will have played football in. Andy, Robbie, the pitches are much nicer than they are back in your day, but were games played in any old condition those days? Did it not take a lot to get them called off, or did the referee just say, yeah, we can play?
I think you've probably summed it up there, Johnny. Unless it was totally flooded or whatever. I played in conditions whenever growing up in the Irish League, and there was pitches that were semi-flooded, and you just continued on playing. But also there was pitches that were frozen, and nowadays you just wouldn't be allowed to walk across them. Never mind play on them. You know, I remember playing against, I think it was Crusaders in the Cup one night at Glenavon, and it was the first and only time I've worn gloves in a game. Right, and I'm not much older as I was only 18, 19, and I don't know where it come from, right? But it'd been absolutely Baltic the whole about 3 or 4 days, right? And we've gone out to play. It was an evening game. We've gone out to play, and it was frozen. The pitch was frozen. They were actually clearing the lines just to see the lines. The snow started to come down. We're playing with the orange ball. I started with these gloves. And within 5 minutes, I've realised I've made the wrong decision on that one because I was getting absolutely dog's abuse from the crowd, you know, and that was my own crowd as well, you know what I mean? So I had to. I think we got a corner. Then I went down and take the corner and got rid of the gloves, threw them in the corner. But the game went on, and I think by the end of the game, we actually won the game 3-0. And with 10 minutes to go, they were trying to get the game called off, because they were 3-0 down in the cup. But they played on, and honestly, there must have been about 2 inches of snow by the time we finished the game. But that was it. You played on. If the two sides decided at the start they were going to play the game, you played on whatever conditions you were allowed to, and then no one got hurt on the night. But it was, I don't think, be anywhere near. You would not be allowed to even step on the grass now, really.
That's brilliant that you were one of the forerunners of wearing gloves. That must have been a bold move in Northern Ireland in the early 80s.
It was a stupid move in Northern Ireland in the 80s. I don't know any time it was, yeah, but I don't know where I got it from, but I thought it was being a smart ass, you know what I mean? But it didn't work out.
Did you play nets that day?
I think it should have, Muchie. Yeah. There was no hiding place that day.
Speaking of frozen pitches, it brings me back to my Sunday League days. I played for years and years Sunday League in London, and we used to go to some rather far-fetched places, some amazing places, some not so good places, all over the city, and it was great fun. But we did play in some terrible conditions as well, and we did play on a frozen pitch once away at Walthamstow. We played a Turkish team up in Walthamstow. Our home matches were generally at Regent Park. It was called the West End League in London, but we go all over the city. It wasn't very West End at all. And we played this team on a frozen pitch. The referee agreed to play it because we both wanted a game, but our centre half, Big Dave Brown, ended up going to the ground and cutting his head open on the pitch. So within about 20 minutes of kickoff, we were calling an ambulance because he cracked his head open on the pitch, and I think he had ended up having to have stitches. And as you do at that level, obviously he was just carted off to the side, and the match did finish. From memory, we lost it, but that was it. Muchie, frozen pitches for you?
Well, ironically, my last game before I signed for Wolves was on a frozen pitch. We got beat 5-1 at Kidderminster in the FA Trophy. I was playing for Southport. I actually scored that day, and I didn't really do a lot. You know, after the game, I'm hearing that Sammy Chapman's in for me, but the pitch was awful. But it's funny what we used to do on the frozen pitches. We used to have leather studs, and we used to cut them in half so that they had 3 spikes that came out. So that gave you a brilliant grip on the pitch, right? So the referee used to come in and we used to show him some boots and he'd go, yeah, that's okay, you know. And then we'd swap into them boots, right, with the spikes on them. And it worked, you know, it was funny. But the mad thing was, when you played on frozen pitches, like you did, any game was on frozen pitches. You played all the time, everywhere. I can't even remember one being called off, if I'm honest, So when you played on them pitches, it's like walking on a golfing green, isn't it? You wreck the green because of the frost. So that's why the pitches, that was part of the reason. October through to the end of February, where the pitches were absolutely diabolical. I mean, Wolves ground was a really heavy pitch, Stoke City's was the same. Derby County, say all these grounds they put about 10 pence into the investment of the pitches, if you know what I'm saying. So that's how they rolled. It was all part of it. And truth be known, you can't tell me any player that wanted a game called off, because once you got somewhere, you were ready to go. Like you said about your pal Brownie, he's obviously a very famous footballer, wasn't he?
Big Dave Brown was a great Sunday League footballer for the heroes of Waterloo.
Because you had fans and all travelling to games, and there's no way the game would have been called off with an hour to go or a half an hour to go, whatever, because the fans are on the way to the ground. So that never really happened. And I remember the frozen pitch, when it was at the Albion, we went to Villa Park, January time, and the pitch was rock solid. But you couldn't run. You could run about 70% in straight line, twisting and turning and all. You could hardly twist and turn at all. But it was like anything, as long as the surface was reasonable, then you got away with a frozen pitch. Then there was no real danger of anybody being injured and stuff like that, as long as you were careful with it. So it was okay for both sides then, really.
But did you play in that game, Robbie? Because when I first signed for Wolves, we played West Brom about 2 weeks after I'd signed. So it was around end of February, March time. And it was at Molineux, and it was frozen, the pitch. We had a friendly against West Brom on normal training day. And Ali Robb was centre half for West Brom with, remember that lad Bennett?
Yeah, Martin Bennett,
player.
yeah.
Very good player, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And I remember colliding into him, and he went off injured. I don't think he played for about 3 months after that day.
Was that you that did that much?
Well, I have to admit it now.
Bennett was, he was a great player. He's rock solid as well, much, but he did have his injury problems, But no, I wouldn't have played now. It was whenever I joined West Brom, I played at Villa Park. And that was the game that was frozen, and it was rock solid. And you just wouldn't need to play now, because obviously they've got this undersoil heating and all that scenario. So it's all the comforts of the world now, isn't it? Really.
But remember the playoffs? I think it was '87. Had you come then, Rob? And we played Aldershot away.
Aldershot away, yeah.
You were in that team, yeah.
I wasn't on the bench that night much. I wasn't in the team that night. Right. But I remember watching the game. Yeah, it was flooded, wasn't it?
It was a horrendous one. It was funny, actually, because when you saw it, like, you'd shoot and it'd stop on the line. I think Tomo had a chance to score once, and he hit it, and the puddle stopped it before it went over the line. And we were laughing like mad.
Yeah, that happened to Blackpool one night as well. I remember Blackpool one night, and it was absolutely gale force up there. The rain hadn't stopped all day. There was puddles on the pitch, and the same thing happened. Blackpool lad got through, slotted it past Kendall, right, and the ball stopped on the line in a puddle, right, and there was a mad scramble to get it away, and we ended up winning the game 2-0. But the winds, the winds that night, Muchie and Johnny, were gale force, and I thought the stands were going to fall down, because the ground wasn't in great condition at that time, as a lot of grounds were. But the actual fear that night was that bits of the stand were going to fall down and come onto the pitch and stuff, you know what I mean? Because the conditions were absolutely horrendous. But we got through and we won 3-0, so that's the main thing, isn't it?
I remember that, Rob. I remember that game, yeah. Conditions were absolutely horrendous, weren't they? I thought the Irish Sea had come in, too far on the pitch. but the wind and the cold, it was absolutely awful. And it reminds me, actually, of the worst conditions I've ever played in as a professional. I played for England B team in Iceland. And the night we played, and it was in end of May, early June time. So you expect it to be a little bit warmer. Anyway, that day, it was exactly like Blackpool. Robbie, it absolutely gale force wind. It was absolutely freezing. It was smashing it down with rain. After the match, right, we go in the changing rooms, and half the players had hypothermia. Honestly, it was unbelievable. And I remember that Paul Stewart stood in the shower, and he was nearly crying. He was that cold, you know what I mean? And I thought, blooming heck, thought it's June time. I thought it'd be a little bit nicer there, didn't you?
It was horrendous, wasn't it? But those are conditions. You played and you did what you had to do. And that's it. As I said, there was very, very few games were called off. The conditions need to be absolutely horrendous before it was called off. So we played in everything, Johnny.
Doesn't sound too far removed from Sunday League, what you were playing in as professional footballers in the 80s, to be honest.
You watched this playing, Johnny, you're probably right.
My favourite waterlogged pitch we played on in London on the Sunday League was away at a place called Cricklewood. Again, it was one of those, we turned up with the heroes of Waterloo for this match against this team called Cricklewood, and it was on council pitches, and they were genuinely waterlogged. But again, a bunch of lads had got up on a a Sunday morning with hangovers, and they wanted the game on. We played it on. We cajoled the ref. I remember the ref being quite young because it should never have been played, because you wreck the pitches if you play in when they're waterlogged. On the adjacent pitch, there was no game going on, and no word of a lie, this local had come out and he was practicing casting, fishing. He was genuinely, because the pools of water were so big, he was just practicing casting. And then
did he catch anything, Johnny? Come on, did he catch anything?
No flies on him, Johnny. That
Correct.
I tell you what,
he was. I don't know whether he was casting, fly fishing, whatever he was practicing. So this game was going on. There was a lad practicing fishing on the pitch next to us, and then again, I would say it was a good way into the second half, someone from the council pitched up. I don't know whether they got word was what was going on, and they went absolutely mad at us. They went mad at the ref. They went mad at us, saying you're just going to wreck these pitches. And I think it probably by then it's been 70, 75 minutes gone. Whatever the score was, I'm pretty sure it was 0-0. We just shook on it and said, well, that's a point each. We'll take that. But games, you just get so fed up with games getting called off. You just try and play them.
Johnny, you sure that bloke wasn't putting his washing on the washing line? You know what I mean? The way you described that fly fishing.
I am no expert at fishing, but I know the bloke was finding enough standing water to practice casting.
Yeah.
You'll probably remember this one. I'm sure Muchie played in this one as well. Millwall away, Muchie. The game was on was it a Sunday afternoon for Sky, or was it Sky?
Oh, I can't remember.
And the only reason it was played was because it was on telly. It might have been Central or whatever. It wouldn't have been Central. It was down in London, would it? But I think it might have been Sky. And the pitch was flooded. 60% of the pitch was water. There's puddles of water on the pitch, and I was subbed on that time. And they're playing the game, and the ball's holding up all over the place. But honestly, the game's only being played because it's on the telly, and it's only going to be finished because it's on the telly. So I'm due to go on about the last 20 minutes of the game, and I'm standing on the touchline, and the gaffer comes up to me. I've done my warm-up. He comes up to me, and I'm just about to go on. He says, right, you've seen where the puddles are. Just avoid them. He said that to me. And I'm thinking, what's he on about? Seriously? Was that a serious comment or what?
I remember, Rob, actually, funny you mentioned that. I played for Swindon once against Coventry in the Premier League, yeah? And it was at Highfield Road. But the live game on, I don't even know which game it was now, if I'm honest, right? But it got called off. So we get to the ground, the next minute they're going, oh, we're on live tonight now, because they switched to us because the other game had been waterlogged or whatever reason it was called off. Obviously, it was bad weather.
I quite liked it, though, when it was tipping down with rain, though. I always found, I played up front at Sunday League level, and I know it's very different, but I always found it gave you a bit of an advantage in the rain, because you'd have defenders slipping around on their arse more, and it just made it a bit more chaotic, which from a striker's perspective I quite enjoyed. I don't know if that translated to the professional game, Muchie.
Were you good in the air, Johnny?
I was all right in the air for a little lad. I'll be honest. I was good in the air, but I used to be quick. So I used to have a big man alongside me. But
yeah,
big man, little man.
Hey, Dugan and Richards, eh?
Let's not for 1 minute pretend it was anything respectable.
You were King John then, weren't you, Johnny? Anyway, what was the question, Johnny?
The question was, I used to love it when it was tipping down, and even when we were on Astro, gave it a little bit of a zip the surface. I used to like it from a forwards perspective because I just thought it gave you half a chance, because you'd have defenders skidding around a bit more. Was that the case for you?
No, I thought it was worse when it was boggy. When it was boggy, I thought it was worse because centre halves could just lose. You could lose them by a yard or two, and they'd just slide in and they'd just chop you in half, and the referee would just say play on, that type thing. So it gave them advantage for me. When it was a firmer pitch or a good pitch, right, you could get away from them quick, and they couldn't get at you to slide tackle, if you know what I'm saying. The worst pitches I've ever played on, we're talking about conditions, and then there's obviously the pitch, was AstroTurf. We played away at Preston. Where else we play? Oldham. They were absolutely awful. They were rock hard, right? The ball bounced like you never believed. And they were putting sand on it, thinking that was the way to soften the AstroTurf, which quite clearly it wasn't. It didn't stay on your feet. You had grazes all over your place, your knees, your sides, everything. So I found them AstroTurf pitches horrible to play on, but now they're very good, aren't they?
And they are. And if anyone young is listening to this, hopefully we've got some young listeners somewhere. They might not have any idea what AstroTurf used to be like. I mean, my lad plays on brilliant 4G pitches, and they're just really, really great. You can slide around on them. They've got the little bits of rubber. There's nothing bad about them. But back in the day, those 1980s Astro pitches at Luton, Preston, Oldham, they were, as you said, rock hard, covered in sand. You could not go to ground in them.
Mind you, John, I couldn't complain because I scored 2 at Preston on the AstroTurf, or the 4G.
I thought we were building up to something there. But do you remember the QPR one, the first one? The
Oh,
first
awful,
one that
wasn't
came
it?
out was the QPR one. I played on that. I played for the Albion actually, and we got relegated that day. But that's beside the point. But it was shocking. It was just concrete. There was no little bits of you see now with the 4Gs. It looks like there's grass on top and stuff like that. There was nothing like that on top of this. This was just concrete. It was smooth and all, but when the ball bounced and stuff like that, you were talking about never getting it down again. So that was probably the worst experience of a pitch that a football shouldn't have been played on. Really, that was horrendous. The first one.
In the Northwest, they had a program called Granada Soccer Night in the early
Oh, yeah.
90s. And Oldham used to always be on it. It was that time when Oldham were doing well under Joe Royle. And whenever they were at home, they just used to seem to win. And I remember there was this one big lad called Frankie Bunn who used
Frankie
to do
Bunn, yeah.
dead well on those plastic pitches. And they had other lads like was it Roger Palmer and Andy Ritchie who just seemed to have they just seemed to have the run of defenders on those plastic pitches that, as Deno was saying, were just bouncing balls here, there, and everywhere.
Holden was the fellow, wasn't he? The left winger they had.
Andy
That's
Holden,
right.
yeah.
They
Definitely.
kept feeding him all the time, and he'd cross it in. And either Frankie Bunn or Andy Ritchie, right? They were brilliant, and they had a centre half. The back was a brilliant player, fast.
Warhurst.
Yeah, Warhurst, but they had another lad as well. He was a black lad.
Earl Barrett.
Earl Barrett.
That's the one, yeah.
But what a side they had then, didn't they?
Henry and Mulligan centre midfield as well.
Yeah, two small lads who were like rats, weren't they?
Yeah, but the thing about them and the teams that played on AstroTurf, they were training on it every day. They were able to go out onto the pitch every day and do the training on it every day. So whenever the away team turned up, they got maybe trained on it on the Friday night if they're allowed to, and maybe experienced it for half an hour before they go and play the game. So it was a massive advantage for the like of an Oldham or Preston or whatever in those scenarios, and that's why they did so well at home.
It was shocking as well to think that was allowed because bore no resemblance to grass pitches whatsoever. And the keepers, I always seem to remember the keepers used to be in long joggers, tracksuit pants, and bits of padding here, there, and everywhere because they'd be having to fling themselves around. And as you said, Robbie, it was effectively like concrete. It had no give in it.
No give at all. And Johnny, it was a massive advantage for the like of an Oldham playing on it. As I say, they were training on it all the time. So for you to do that, and even whenever you're trying to be competitive in midfield and stuff like that, you couldn't go to ground or anything. So it wasn't really true football, being competitive true football. I'm sure the Oldham fans loved it, you know what I mean? But you could not do the things that you could do in a normal football pitch. And as I say, it was a massive advantage for teams that were playing on it and training on it.
I mean, for you, Robbie, it must have been a nightmare. Or were the wing areas the bits that were usually okay? Were they the bits that were preserved and not quite as cloggy as the rest?
They were better, Johnny, yeah. They were, because centre midfield was a busy area, wasn't it? So mostly down the centre of the pitch would have been a little bit buggier than what it was out wide. So that's why I stayed out wide, Johnny. It wasn't the fact that I didn't want to get involved. You know what I mean? But it was the fact that, whenever you did get the ball, you had an opportunity to run at defenders and do your little bits yourself. So every now and again you came inside, but the centre midfield area was always going to get buggier than what the out wide was. So I was happy enough to stay out there and wait for Muchie to pass it to me,
Is that because, Robbie, that's why you're on the bench all the time, because you were playing that wide?
I think it might have been. Do you remember they used to say, get chalk in your boots?
Yeah, you said.
That's what I used to do.
We got relegated at QPR, you said, right? And then every game we mentioned, you said, I was on the bench that day. So you were a good wide player, weren't you?
Yeah, I was, yeah. Too wide sometimes.
There was one game that I'm sure you both played in. When we got promoted from the 4th Division, we either won the league or got promoted away at Newport County. You were wearing the old white kit. They were in orange. I've seen footage from that day. I wasn't there that day, but I've seen footage, and that looked like a bit of a mud bath as well. I think Bully got a couple of goals. He might have one goal at least. And that pitch looked shocking at Newport.
Johnny, I scored.
Did you?
2-0 we won, and I scored from the edge of the box, top corner. I can't believe it. So you did see some footage, but you didn't see me scoring, no?
They only used to show Bully's goals, didn't they?
Johnny, you just assumed it was Bully, didn't you? You just assumed
I can't argue with that one. But it was a quagmire, weren't they? Go on, Rob, sorry.
Yeah, no, I actually didn't play in that, Johnny, because I've been called up to play for Northern Ireland. So I went across, played for Northern Ireland, and then I heard that the lads had got promoted when I was away. So I was dead chuffed for the whole thing. So they did the business on a poor pitch.
The problem was, as well, in those days, they used to warm up in the goal mats before the game. Whereas nowadays, even in the lower divisions, they bring out these portable goal posts and they all warm up roughly around, not the corner flag area, but in that gap between the sort of corner flag and the 18-yard box. That's where all the shooting practice takes place and the rest of it. So they do preserve the goal mount a little bit better. There was just no common sense back in your day. The groundsmen never cottoned on to that, did they?
No, do you know what the problem was, Johnny? They didn't have another set of goalposts to put on the side. That's not the problem.
Maybe that was true.
They didn't have that either. But nowadays, Johnny, you could put, the pitches nowadays. They're fantastic, and on all levels really. You look at even the League Two and stuff like that. The pitches the whole way through the season are absolutely fantastic. So it's a different time, different era, and nowadays the boys are well looked after with regards to pitches now.
It's money though, Robbie, isn't it? Because they just didn't have the money, and they wouldn't spend it on the pitches. When we played, remember, we used to have a match ball, right? And then there's 3 spare ones in a black bag. So if one got kicked out the ground, they'd throw one on, and that was it. But they're everywhere now, aren't they? You know what I mean? It's unbelievable, really. They couldn't invest in the pitches because it wasn't a priority for them, was it? If truth be known.
Who was the groundsman at Wolves? Did you know him at all?
Yeah, Billy Pilbeam. I said to him all the time, Johnny, every time we trained on the pitch, which wasn't very often as it happens, I used to say, "Hey, Billy," and he'd go, "What?" I say, "Your pitch is shite." And he used to go mad, didn't he, Robbie?
But the thing was, Mutsy, there'd been nobody on the pitch, right, or nobody in the stadium, right, and we'd have been walking across the pitch. The next thing you'd have heard a voice, wouldn't you? "Get off the pitch," and Billy would have appeared from nowhere. He must have just watched out for us coming along. But I remember he used to try and. Do you remember he used to have the hognail boots on, Mutsy? And he used to hit the crossbar, trying to beat everybody hitting the crossbar. Just toe poked it all the time. But there was good characters in those days around the club as well. With great fun on me.
Bill had 2 pitches to look after because there was the normal pitch and then there was at least an area of grass the size of a pitch between the pitch and the John Island stand in those days, wasn't there? There was plenty of room.
We trained there on a Friday, didn't we? Every Friday under Graham Turner, we trained just in front of the stand, just a bit of a warm-up stretches, a little circle and stuff like that. We didn't really do a lot on the Friday. Then he had us in for their meetings where he was writing with his chalk on the blackboard. It's a long time ago, that, isn't it? Hey.
Trained in the gap between the pitch and the stand, and of course the car park as well every now and then. You trained on the car park on a Friday, didn't you?
We did do that as well, but he did balance that out. In fact, I think, if I'm right in saying, on a Friday, actually, we trained on the car park. If we had a midweek game, night match, that's when we trained, just did a bit in front of the stand, you know what I mean?
It was the cold that got me. I didn't mind playing in the wet and I didn't mind bad pitches, but when it got really, really cold, that's when I struggled. I really, really struggled in the cold. But, obviously, Sunday League changing rooms and all the rest of it, we haven't got the best conditions. And very often we used to get changed by the side of the pitch. If the changing rooms were locked up or whoever it was from the council who came over hadn't turned up in time to open them. So there were plenty of times we'd just get changed by the side of the pitch and it was just horrible, cold, wet through before you've even started out.
But then you're supposed to run around then, Johnny, to get warm. You know what I mean? Have you ever heard of the warm up, Johnny? There's something that you do before the game where you get warmed up and then you're ready to play.
I wasn't a fan of doing doing anything. Do you not know? You must know what Sunday League football's about. No one warms up. I wasn't a fan of doing anything that didn't involve a ball. So even when we did warm up, I'd just offer to give the keeper a few. So
your warm up was the first 10 minutes of the game. Then is that what you're trying to say?
Exactly.
You were getting warm then. No, but I was going to say, Johnny, I grew up in the Irish League, and the changing rooms honestly were pretty average, really, for that level, because the money wasn't in the game at that time. So you're changing in areas where you've got 10, 14, 11, 12, 13, 14 people in the change rooms and you're on top of each other all over the place. So it's a great upbringing, really, you know what I mean? It was, once you move on to other things and whatever, you don't leave that behind you. You remember all that stuff. So whatever you bump into in the future is no big shock to you, really. So it's fantastic times. And I'm sure the Sunday League was the same. I remember playing youth team football and all that sort of stuff before I played for Glenavon. And some of those teams and the people that you meet and those were the best days of your life, really, you know what I mean? And the crack was absolutely fantastic. So it was all good times growing up then.
Yeah, you're spot on. Some of my best mates were made playing Sunday League football. And you come from all walks of life. And the only thing getting you together was that sort of 90 minutes on a Sunday morning. But then you find over time that you've got quite a lot in common, and it was a great way, especially when I moved to London with work, so it was a great way of meeting people as well. I moved here without really knowing anyone, and then you find yourself playing. God, I must have played Sunday League for the best part of 15 years down here, and it was only when I had kids that I gave it up. So you're dead right, there is that camaraderie, and the fact that the conditions were so utterly appalling probably made it more fun, although it didn't feel it always at the time.
But it was part of the fun. That was part of the fun. Whenever I was growing up, I played for the Boys Brigade, and we played in a field that the local farmer had given to the Boys Brigade to play football on. And it is just a cow field. And we used to do the lines, put the nets up, and off we go to play. Right, so you'd have played the game, absolutely quagmire. You'd have gone, and the River Ban would have been just down the road. Right, so you'd gone in the River Ban then to have your wash and your clean up before you went back into the change rooms, and that's the way it was when you were 13, 14, 15 growing up. It's fantastic times.
They were brilliant times, weren't they? I mean, that's where all your pals were. You played, funny, you reminded me, Rob, I started in the Boys Brigade. Then I played for a team called Ainsdale, then Birkdale Garage, and they were a brilliant side. We won the league all the time and all that type of stuff. And we only 16, 17 around that time, I suppose. But they were absolutely great times. They were. But the pitches, as you say, they were awful. But you just got on with it and had the crack and had a laugh. Our manager was called Harry. What was his last name? I can't remember. Well, anyway, he had a heart attack once, and we were all worried because he was a great character. You know what I mean? He knew nothing about football, just like taking the team. Didn't even do a team talk or anything. Anyway, after he had his heart attack, all the lads being so nice, as like they are, they started calling him Harry Hart. Because he'd had a heart attack, and I'm thinking, wow. But it was just it was all banter and a laugh, wasn't it? You know what I mean? That's your grounding, isn't it, Robbie? You know what I mean? So
it is, yeah. And whenever I go back now to Northern Ireland and I go back into that sort of community again, I see people that I played with at that time, and we sit down and we'll have a beer and have the crack, and those things. And I think around that time when you're a teenager in early 20s, they really stick with you for the rest of your life, and you don't forget those kind of things, So it's a lot of fun to be had then, definitely.
Well, it's like royalty for you, wasn't it, Rob? Because when you think about it, when you came to Wolves and everyone said how bad it was, the condition of the changing rooms and the ground and this, that, and the other, you thought it was like Wembley Stadium, didn't you?
I didn't know what they were talking about.
Yeah, after playing in Northern Ireland at all them grounds, you know what I mean?
Well, whenever they walked in that first day and then they threw the training kit on the ground, I was thinking, this is luxury. They've got training kit, you know what I mean?
Till you put that red tracksuit on.
Oh no, yeah. Listen, I just can't believe they actually gave me that on the first day.
I can't believe you put it on.
Well, I had nothing else. It was either that or training a slip. That's all I had with me. I had a pair of socks and a slip. But you couldn't go out from the first day of that. That'd been some photographing Express and Star, wouldn't it?
I'm telling you, Robbie, I had to trade in my G's before I put that red trackie on. I'm telling you.
I'll know the next time, Mochi. I'll know the next time.
Yeah.
Your facilities in that old Waterloo Road stand probably were comparable to Sunday League. The Hackney Marshes were our big Sunday League area down in London that had huge sets of changing rooms on the north and the south side of the Marshes. Well, it was called the Marshes, but it was so big. I think it had over 100 pitches. They've had to put changing rooms at each end because it would have taken you half an hour to walk across, maybe more, 45 minutes to walk from one end to the other. So they divided it up, and those changing rooms were absolutely heaving, as you can imagine, before and after games, but all good fun. There we go. Well, that's just a little bit of an insight from the lads into some of the more questionable conditions and facilities they used down the years. Hopefully today's players don't have to go through any of that, but maybe it'll give them a bit of grounding anyway. Thanks for listening to this episode of Muchie and Deno. Don't forget to like and subscribe every week now going forward. So it'd be great to build up a bigger listener base as well. But until next time, thanks for joining us, Robbie and Andy, and have a good rest of the week.
And you, Johnny, take care, mate.
Thanks, Johnny, and yourself. Take care, Robbie.
See you, Mochi.